This is Josh White with JW Math Tutoring, and today's video is going to cover Digital SAT Practice Test number 2 from the Bluebook app, specifically the Math section, Module 1. Now, if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and of course, subscribe to my channel and sign up for notifications. But otherwise, let's go ahead and get right to it.
But life is a dream that calculus could never predict.
Okay, so I'm ready to begin. Digital SAT practice test number 2, the math section, module 1 in the Bluebook app. So the first question here is just a basic linear equation, and they want to know which of these answer choices has the same solution as this given equation. So hopefully you recognize, you just go ahead and subtract 6 on both sides. That will turn into 4x minus 12. So the correct answer is just going to be letter C, and that's it. You can move on to the next problem. All right, now here we have a set of parallel lines. And all you have to figure out here is that W is a corresponding angle with the 170-degree angle. Therefore, they will be congruent. So the correct answer to this is just letter D, 170, and there's nothing more else to do. All right, now for this problem, you have a bunch of values and they just want to know what the mean is. So you could go ahead on the calculator, Desmos calculator, you could add up all these values. If you do that, you're going to get 90. Then you could divide it by 10 because if you count it up, there are 10 values. So the mean is going to come out to equal 9, and that is the correct answer. However, if we go into the Desmos calculator, what you can also do is you can go to the functions thing here and select mean, and then you can just type in all the values. And then it just gives us 9. So you don't have to bother adding them all up and then dividing by 10. There's a mean function built into the Desmos calculator, so you can just use that and go ahead and just get it, straight from that. Okay, next question here. We have basically it's a linear equation, but with two variables. And so they tell you that basically R, the number of reptiles, is 16, and they just want to know then what does B have to equal. So all you're really doing is just basically plugging in 16 for R and then going ahead and solving for B. Now, 5 times 16 actually turns out to be 80. So when you solve this out, you get just 2.5b essentially equal to 0. You subtract 80 on both sides. Therefore, they cannot care for any birds, if they're caring for 16 reptiles on a given day. So the correct answer for this is just going to be 0. And you could technically back solve this once you set up, once you set up the equation. Or you could go to Desmos and plug in, type this in with both variables and use sliders to figure it out. But I think it's easier just, to basically plug the number in and then solve the equation that way. Okay, next up we have a cube, and they tell us the length of one of its sides, and they want to know what the volume is. So, basically, if you think about the cube, each side has to be the same length. So 41, 41, 41. So the volume of cube, it's just length times width times height. So that's just 41 times 41 times 41, or it's really just 41 cubed. That comes out to 68,921. Correct answer is going to be letter D. And that's it. No more work needed for that one. All right, next up, number 6, here we have a fill-in free response question. And this one deals with percentages. So it says, 13 is p% of 25. What is the value of p? So there's multiple ways you could set this up. You could go 13 and then is equal sign p%, okay? p of multiplication 25. And then, to solve this, you just divide by 25 on both sides. So you do this out, it just comes out to 0.52. That's the percentage represented as a decimal. So therefore, the actual answer we fill in, because, this is equal to 52%, is just going to be 52. So if you want to think about it that way, it's fine. Or if you think about it, okay, 13 out of 25, you get 13 questions correct out of 25 total on test. What percentage is that? That's really what it's asking for. But regardless of how you think about it or set it up, correct answer that you plug in is 52. All right, now here you have a question that deals with basically an exponential function, specifically exponential growth, because this population is increasing by 4% each year. And they want to know, what is it going to look like if you start with 15,000 people, population increases by 4% for the next 5 years, and to get the, set up an equation that will give you the final population. So hopefully you recognize that um, the 15,000 is going to be the initial amount, and in an exponential function, that goes out front. So you can cross this out, you can cross this out. And then since the population is increasing, basically exponential functions are set up such that they're, it's like 1 plus or minus r is the value in the parentheses that's then raised to the variable. And r is basically your growth rate or your decay rate, or if you're dealing with interest and interest rate. So this one's just going to be like 1 plus and then 4% as a decimal, 0.04. So that's just 1.04. Correct answer is going to be letter D. Now, I will point out you could also technically back solve this by like picking a number of years and work calculating out what the population should be, and based on a 4% increase. So like start with 15,000 and do it for 2 years, 15,000 plus 0.04 times 15,000, and then do 0.04 times that new number and add it to it, and then go down through the answers, plug in x equals 2, and see which one matches. So you could also back solve it that way as well. All right, here we have a quadratic function. So there are many different ways that you could solve this one. So first way, guess what I would say is the most straightforward way would be to get everything equal to 0 and then try to solve it by factoring or some other method. So I would actually move the 4x squared over to the right, and I would move the 7x over to the right. So you're going to add both of them. And then, of course, you still have minus 36. Okay, set that equal to 0. And now it turns out that this can factor. It's going to be 4x minus 9 times x, correct that, plus 4. So now, and you can just double check this, if you do the FOIL, it's 16x for the outer term minus an x for the inner term, so positive 7x overall. Now you set each of these factors equal to 0, and you're going to get x equals 9/4. That's going to be the correct answer. The other one, technically, you don't have to do it because they only want the positive solution is x equals -4. So the correct answer is going to be B. Now, here are alternate ways you could solve this using the Desmos calculator. So first, get rid of this. You could go ahead and you could just graph this function out as it is. You don't need to change anything about it. Okay, so you can see here, I'll just expand this to make it a little bit larger. We have the graph, and actually just go ahead, there, clear the screen. And, okay, what's the positive solution? It's 2.25, so you would have to recognize that 9/4 is equivalent to 2.25, and you could just confirm that on the Desmos calculator. So one way is just to graph it. The other way, alternate way to do this would be just to basically take the left side of the equation and just plug in your answer choices For x, okay. So first answer choice, when you plug it in and evaluate the left side, notice it is negative 24.5. Does that equal negative 36? No. Then you could move on to the next one, just replace the two sevens with nines. That's negative 36. Okay, there we got it. That's basically back solving, just plugging in the answer choices and seeing which one works. So that's an alternate way that you could solve this as well using the Desmos calculator. All right, next, problem number 9. Here we have two dot plots. They're asking about um, the standard deviation between each of them. So you could, so first thing, you technically could use Desmos for this, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the correct answer for this is going to be B, that the standard deviation between class A and class B are equal to each other. And the reason for that is because if you notice the spread for both of them is the same. It's like one value here, one value here, three values, four values, six values, seven values. And it's going to be the same exact thing here. One, one, three, four. Uh, sorry, this should be five, not four. Five, six, and seven. And the numbers themselves are all separated by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 up through 20. So the spread of the numbers relative to each other is identical. So that's what makes these two standard deviations identical. Now, in Desmos, you could go over here. Bring this up here. Where did I scroll down too far? We want right here. So you could go down and you could do the standard deviation of each of them to technically calculate it. It's going to be kind of a pain because there's going to be, it's like you've got 1, 1, 1, 2, 3 threes, 4 fours, 5 fives, 6 sixes, 7 sevens. And you could type that whole thing in and get this whatever the standard deviation value is. Then you could do the same thing with the second one to confirm that they're equal. But hopefully you're familiar with the fact that uh, when you have dot plots like this, the spread of the numbers basically tells you how the standard deviations are related. Sorry, correct answer, as you said earlier, is B. All right, now question number 10. Here we have a graph, polynomial, cubic polynomial, and they want to know about the zeros. Specifically, it just says for how many values of x does f of x equal 0. So that's how many, asking you how many zeros there are, or in other words, how many x-intercepts there are. We can clearly see there is 1, 2, 3 of them right here. So the correct answer for this problem is just going to be letter C, and that's it. All right, now for this problem, they give you an exponential function and they give you a point that lies on that function. They want to know what then the value of the function at another x value is. So multiple ways you could do this. First way is to basically just go ahead. So we got 19 a to the x and plug in these values. So for x, we're going to be plugging in 3. And for this value, we're going to be plugging in 2375. So 2375 equals 19a cubed. And then you just solve this. We divide by 19. A cubed turns out to be 125. And then you just cube root both sides. So a turns out to be 5. And then, so we have 19, 5 to the x. And they want now the x is being 4. So you just punch in the calculator, 19 times 5 to the 4th, that just comes out to 11,875. So correct answer, 11,875. Now, you could also do this on the Desmos calculator. So you could type in, 19 times a to the, I'm going to add a slider for it, to the x. Okay, just expand this a little bit. So now, basically, you're going to increase the slider, and again, the specific point we're looking for, and this is going to be, we're going to have to like zoom way out here. Yeah, we're looking for the point 32375. So if we trace along here, okay, right here we're at 3, but it's at 1407, so it's not large enough. So you'd have to keep going a little bit further, trace along the graph. Now you can see right here, okay, 3 comma 2375. And that's a specific point that's on the graph, so that would tell you that A is 5, and then you could just plug in now you could basically just scroll up here to 4, but it's going to take a while because it's like all the way up at 11,875. But that's an alternate way that you could do it using Desmos, as well, and a slider. Okay, next question. Here we have a system of equations. So, traditional way, or straightforward way, and I'll show that even though it's definitely not the fastest way, would be to go ahead and set these two things equal to each other because they're both equal to y. Also, I'm going to multiply out the first one, and it's going to be x squared, let's see here, plus 2x minus 8, and then we set that equal to 6x minus 12, then subtract over 6x, x squared minus 4x, then add 12, plus 4, okay, equals 0. And then you can go ahead and factor it. It's going to be x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so it's a double root. It's just x equals 2. So now that tells us, okay, right away it's either C or D. What does y equal? Well, y is equal to 6 times 2 minus, not minus 0, minus 12. Or 12 minus 12, so y is equal to 0. Therefore, it's the point 2 comma 0. It is letter C. However, so much quicker and so much easier to solve this using Desmos because we can just go right here. Just to zoom in. Also, 1 second, let me clear the screen. Okay, so we got a better view. And again, you can type these equations in just as they're given. You don't need to do anything to them. You don't need to multiply it out. You don't need to, whatever. Okay. So here are the two equations, and basically we're looking, for the intersection point. So now if you look at the answer choices, do they intersect at 0, 2, up here? No. Do they intersect at negative 4, 2, up, 4 to the left and up 2? No, clearly not. So it's 2, 0 or 2, negative 4. Well, 2, negative 4 is down here. That's wrong. It has to be 2, 0. And I mean, you can see that, basically that right here, this is the intersection point that's on both of them. So again, correct answer is letter C. All right, here we have one with two similar triangles, and they want to know about the sine of an angle. So, okay, they tell us that the sine of f, so we have this first triangle FGH, and G is the right angle. Okay, so I'm just going to put F here, put H up there. All right. They tell us sine of F is 308. Sine, of course, is opposite over hypotenuse, 317. So sine F opposite over hypotenuse. Then it says, what's the value of sine J? So we don't know any of the sides in the other triangle, But we do know, since they're similar, which sides or which angles correspond to each other. So J corresponds to F. We know that K is a right angle, and therefore an L also corresponds to H. So because F and J are the same angle measure, that means the sine of them will be identical as well. So in other words, the sine of F, which is 308 over 317, is going to equal the sine of angle J. Because they're similar triangles, the corresponding angles are congruent. Therefore, the sine for each of them will be congruent. So correct answer is just letter B, 308 over 317. Now for question number 14 here, this is again a student-produced response, or basically a free response that we have to type in. So this one, you have an exponential function, and basically this is the number of bacteria, t minutes after some initial observation. How much time does it take for the number of bacteria to double? So hopefully you notice that this number out front here, the 60,000, this is the initial or starting amount. That's always how, exponential functions are set up. So for it to double, that means the amount we would end up with after whatever period of time, it would be double that, or 120,000. So you set up the equation, 120,000 equals 60,000, and then times 2 to the t over 410. So this might look like an exponential equation that you need to solve using, log functions or ln's, but you do not need to do that, because if you divide by 60,000 on both sides, you end up with 2 equals 2 to the t over 410. Okay, so on the left side you have 2, which is the same as 2 to the first. On the right side you have 2 to something, t over 410. So these two exponents need to be equal. Or in other words, t divided by 410 has to equal 1. Therefore, the amount of time required for it to double is 410 minutes. So the correct answer is 410. Now, you technically could also get that just by looking at the problem without even doing any work, because of this number down here. This 410 down here, this is also basically the amount of time for the population to double. So that's not just a coincidence that the answer 410 is the same as this number, that t is divided by in the problem. Problem number 15, here you have basically just a formula, and you're asked to solve it in terms of 4j plus 9, which is the denominator on the right. So easiest way to do this would be just to multiply both sides by 4j plus 9. And then once you do that, that'll cancel out on the right. On the left side, you have 4j plus 9 times p, and that's equal to just k now. And then you can just divide by p. So correct answer for this is going to be letter A. It's just k over p. Now you could also do this by using the strategy of picking numbers. And so if you're going to do it that way, what I would do is I would pick a number for j and a number for k. So first I would just let j equal 1. And when you plug that in the denominator, 4 times 1 is 4 plus 9. So you have something over 13. Now I'm going to pick a number for k that makes this into a nice, easy value. So I'm going to let k also equal 13, because 13 over 13, which is what p is equal to 1. So now 4j plus 9, 4 times 1 plus 9, 4 plus 9 is 13. So you're going through the answer choices and you're looking for which one on the right side is equal to 13. So A is equal to k over p, 13 over 1, that is 13, that checks. B is equal to 13 times 1. That's also 13, so that could be a correct answer. C is 13 minus 1. That's 12. That's obviously wrong. And D is 1 divided by 13. So you cross it out. Now what you'd have to do is you technically would have to pick a new set of numbers. So like maybe I would let j equal 1 and I would now just change k to 26, which would mean that p would equal 2. And then you compare A versus B. K divided by P, 26 divided by 2 is still equal to 13 because I didn't change J. So 4J plus 9 is still 13. But for K times P, now we have 26 times 2, which is 52. That is wrong. So that's how you could now definitively conclude that A is the correct answer. Next up, for 16, we have a student-produced response, and you're basically given a line. And they tell you that R is perpendicular to this line. So all we have to do is find the slope of this line. Now, if you know the shortcut formula, I'm just going to rearrange this and just technically put it into standard form. AX plus BY equals C. If you know the shortcut formula, which is that the slope is negative A over B, then you could just look at this and you could realize it's going to be negative 8 over 4, which is negative 2. However, if you don't know that, you could just go ahead and put it into slope-intercept form, and get 4y equals negative 8x plus 6, and then divide by 4. And now that it's in slope-intercept form, you still have the slope equaling negative 2. So that's the slope of line P, and now R is perpendicular to that. So, perpendicular lines can have a slope which is an opposite reciprocal. So we're going to flip the 2 to the denominator, and we're also going to take the opposite of it. So it turns into positive 1/2. So you could grid in 1 divided by 2, or you could also grid in 0.5 or 0.5. Either would be acceptable, but those are the correct answers to this problem. Now for number 17, we have a circle. So if you think about uh, this circle, they tell you that this arc on it. So, okay, we have a circle here. O is the center, and we have an arc RS. So it should say here's R, here's S. It is 100 degrees. And they want to know what's the measure of the angle associated with this ROS. So ROS is a central angle, and the measure of a central angle is always equal to the measure of its corresponding arc. So the answer to this one is just 100, and that's it. Nothing else to do for this problem. Next up, 18. Here we have a graph of, looks like some type of polynomial function, and they want to know which equation could match this. So, a couple things. Notice here we have some zeros at 5, negative 5, excuse me, and 0 and 4. So that means we're going to have factors of x minus negative 5, x minus 0, and x minus 4. Now, the other thing to note is that at the negative 5 one, the negative 5, 0, which these two negatives technically just turn to a positive, so it's x plus 5. Notice it bounces. It does not cross, or in other words, it touches the x axis. That means that it's going to have an even multiplicity. So we're going to assume this is a squared. I mean, technically it could be a fourth or a higher even number, but the answers only have squared in them. So now, when we look at the possible answer choices, which one has an x plus 5 raised to an even power? So as of right now, we can get rid of this, we can get rid of this. It's got to be either B or D, and it has to be letter B, because notice it has the x minus 4 here that matches as well. And of course, the x minus 0, that just becomes x, and they just put that in the front. So correct answer to this one is letter B. Now, just to show you, obviously you could also just graph this one out as well. Let me just clear the screen here. So you could just go through the answer choices. Okay, so this is the first answer choice. Notice, does this match the graphic on the screen? Obviously not. Now you could, for the second one, all you have to do is add the squared. Let's zoom out just a little bit. And here's the thing. This one looks like much steeper, like for the max and min, but that's because when you look at this graph, notice that on the y-axis, each grid mark is 20 units. So the max goes up to 20 and the min is down here somewhere between 0 and 20. So it actually is the correct graph. It just doesn't look like it because they have different scales on the x and y axis in the picture. But now you could check the others. So you could, first of all, get rid of this exponent, make this a -5 and a +4. Does this look like the graph? Obviously not. And now for the last one, you could make it, sorry, keep it +4, -5, add the squared in again, and this one does not look like it either. So again, you could also confirm this one just by graphing each of these four choices out and then seeing which one matches the picture you're given. Okay, so for this problem, number 19, they give you a description, in words. They want to know which type of function it is. So it says f of x equals 201% of x. Since this percentage here that is being multiplied by x, because of implies multiplication, is more than 100, hopefully you recognize this function is going to be increasing. In other words, as you increase the x values, the f of x or y values will also get larger. So you can get rid of a, you can get rid of b. Now, when we're comparing C versus D, if we actually, try to translate this, so we have f of x equal sign 201%. So 201%, if you write it as a decimal, is just 2.01. So we have 2.01, and then of implies multiplication x. Now, if you look at this, hopefully you recognize this is just a linear function. This would be no different than like the line y equals 2.01x, and you could say plus 0, like the y-intercept is 0. So the correct answer for this is going to be D. It's a linear function. For it to be exponential, we'd have to set it up again where the variable is in an exponent, a number being raised to an exponent. This is just taking x and multiplying it by a number, which is essentially just the slope of this function, the 201%, or the 2.01. So the correct answer to this one is letter D. Now, you could also go to the calculator here, and this is an easy way to confirm it as well. Just type in the expression 201% of x. Notice, it just gives you a nice line here. You can easily see it's increasing, and you can easily see that it is linear. It's not an exponential function that is real flat and then gets steep. So if you're confused by the wording, again, go to the Desmos calculator, type it in. You can get the picture right there. Now you know it's letter D. Okay, the next function, number 20, or excuse me, next problem, number 20. Here you have a function, and they tell you that the new function here is defined by f of x plus 5. So there's a couple ways you could do this. First, I'll talk about the traditional way, and then I'll show you the much quicker, easier way to do it in Desmos. So the traditional way would be the following. Notice that the x plus 5, since it's in the parentheses, means a shift to the left of 5 units. So wherever f has its minimum, g's minimum is going to be 5 units to the left of that because g has shifted 5 units to the left. So where does f have its minimum? Well, this is a quadratic function, so its minimum is going to occur at the vertex, h comma k. And the way we can find that when it's in standard form like this is use the shortcut formula. H is equal to negative b over 2a. So I am going to do negative 64 over 2 times 4, or negative 64 over 8. Therefore, the x-coordinate of the vertex for f of x is going to equal negative 8. So now, if I shift that to the left by 5 units, I start at negative 8, I go to the left 5 units, which is the same as subtracting 5, or adding negative 5, and I get negative 13. So the correct answer to this problem is going to be letter A, negative 13. Now, again, like many of these problems, it's much quicker, much easier to figure this out in Desmos. So let me just clear the screen, bring up the calculator. So what I'm going to do is first graph f of x. Okay, now what I'm going to do is add another expression. Let's just expand this a little bit. Okay, so now g of x is going to equal f of x plus 5. So we can zoom in here. The green is f of x. The purple is g of x, which is f of x shifted to the left by 5 units. So where does the minimum happen? Well, you just use your thing here. Okay, it's at negative 13.6. Of course, that's 5 units to the left of the minimum for f of x. So you just click on the point here, negative 13.6. Correct answer for the x value is going to be negative 13, and that's it. You can figure the whole thing out, again, using the Desmos calculator. Now, for question 21, here we have, it's basically just going to be a proportion problem, essentially. So they give you these results. 803 voters were asked who they voted for, 483 for one candidate, 320 for another candidate. Now they want to know, okay, if 6424 voted, how many votes would Angel Cruz be expected to win? So all we have to do is basically go ahead and find the percentages. Excuse me, I misread that. I missed the word by. It says by how many votes would Angel Cruz be expected to win. So they're looking for the difference between the vote totals. So all we have to do is go ahead and basically say, okay, for Angel Cruz, 483 out of 803 is equal to how many votes out of 6424? And you go ahead and basically solve this proportion, and it's going to come out to 3864. You can just type into Desmos 483 times 6424 divided by 803. Then you do the same thing for Terry Smith. 320 votes out of 803. And we're going to assume the same proportion or same amount out of the 6,424 total. You go ahead and you solve this out, and this comes out to 2560. So now you just subtract these two numbers, and that's it. 1304. Correct answer is letter B. Note that another alternate way to think about this is you could technically subtract the difference here, which is going to be 163 votes. And then you would multiply that by 6424 divided by 803. That is basically like the ratio or the scale factor of like number of people in the survey to total number of people. So just to show you that this way works as well. So you take, again, 6424 divided by 803. So there's 8 times as more people that are going to vote in the election as compared to the sample. So now just take that and multiply that by the difference between them, the 163, and it comes out to 1304. So that's just an alternate way to think about it or to figure it out. Okay, now last question on this section, number 22. So there are multiple ways to do this. You can do this basically by hand, or you could also instead use the Desmos calculator. The calculator way is going to be probably by far the easiest way, but I'll show the traditional or way by hand first. So A is some number, and it tells us that these things intersect at exactly 1 point. So that means we set these equal to each other. Okay, and then if you go to solve this, so you get 2x squared minus 24x, and then we have plus 64 minus a equal to 0. Okay, so basically I'm setting these equal to each other and then solving by setting equal to 0, and that's going to give us essentially the intersection point of these two functions. So now, first of all, I would divide everything by 2 here just to make the numbers a little easier to work with. So so then it becomes x squared minus 12x plus 32. Now it's going to make it a over 2, but that's fine. And on the right, you just, it still says 0 because 0 divided by 2 is still 0. Okay, so what happens is for these to intersect in exactly one point, in other words, you have only one solution to this problem, we need this quadratic equation on the left to have only one real root. Okay, basically we don't want them to intersect twice. If we solve this out and we got two different answers for x, that means there would be two different points where they intersect, but it tells us in the problem they intersected exactly one point. So what that means is on the left, this is going to the whole thing's going to have to factor as like x, and it's going to be minus some number squared. It's going to be the same parenthesis twice. The way that's going to work out is if this whole expression is equal to 36, because x squared minus 12x plus 36 will factor as x minus 6 times x minus 6. Same parenthesis twice, or in other words, a double root, repeated root. And then that would give you, you would square root, you could square root both sides by solving this, and you'd get just one value, which is x equals 6. Now, that is going to be the answer to the question. So the correct answer to this is C. Notice you don't actually have to find what the value of A is. I mean, if they wanted to make this problem a lot more difficult, they could have actually done that. But the correct answer is going to be 6, and that's it. So now, what I'm going to do is show you how you could do this on the Desmos calculator in a much quicker and probably easier manner. So bring up the calculator. We're going to graph the first function, which is the quadratic. And then let's expand this second one. Okay, I'm going to add a slider for A. Now, what you have to do is you basically have to fool with this until they only intersect one point. So notice here, right now they currently intersect at 2 points. So notice if I increase these values, it's still 2 points. So now I'm going to have to decrease these values. So I keep going, keep going, keep going. And it looks like right around, somewhere around here, like -8, maybe it's -8 point something. I mean, you can zoom in even closer just to see where exactly it happens. But it looks like right around here, and the intersection point is like maybe right here, yeah, at 6. So the point is, if you look at the possible answer choices, I mean, clearly it's not going to be -8. It's clearly not going to be -6. You know what I'm saying? Those are way over on the other side of the x-axis. So you look at now 6 versus 8. Okay, here it looks like they're intersecting one time at 6. For them to intersect at 8, 8 is like way up here on the quadratic at positive 24. And the only way the line gets up there, okay, here the line is now intersecting at this point, but if you scroll down, you can see it's obviously intersecting at another one. But again, the problem, they tell us it intersects at exactly only one point. So here you just have to use a slider if you want to use the Desmos calculator to eventually get A to the point where you can see they only intersect once, and then that just confirms that the value is, the x value of that point is 6. Okay, so those were solutions to Module 1 from Digital Practice Test 2 inside, of course, the math section inside the Bluebook app. If you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to leave them below. And also, be sure to check out the solutions to the second module from this Digital Practice Test 2, both the easier module, which I call 2A, and the harder module, 2B, as those will be posted soon as well.